What's going on, Who That Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And we have a special guest with us. Well, I don't even consider him a guest anymore. This is his third time here on the State of the Saints podcast. You all know him, Saints analyst, college football analyst, Mike Detillier. Mike, what's going on?
Hey, pleasure to be here this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for being a part of the State of the Saints podcast with us, Mike. Really excited about the Saints Week 17 matchup versus the Carolina Panthers. But before we get into that, I just want to back up a tad bit. The Saints played on Christmas Day on last week, and they had a historical performance. We seen Alvin Kamara. He scored 6 touchdowns in that game. Mike, tell me what you thought about that game and what really stood out to you about this New Orleans Saints team.
Well, their ability to run the football. I mean, come on. That was a dominating performance up front along the offensive line. And I said it post-game. It was the best game I've ever seen Toronto Armstead play at left tackle. But you did it with James Hurst. On one side, you just made do. And that's what it's all about. This time of year, no one's healthy. Okay, no team is healthy in the NFL. Everybody's dealing with COVID issues one way or another. So it's no excuse. You just got to go out there and play the best people you got. What people don't understand is that's what you spend the offseason doing. Accumulating talent for when you're going to need it. It's not if, it's when you're going to need it. And I thought they did a great job running the football. It was effective. They kept pounding away. Alvin Kamara, I don't know what more I could say about him. He just had an unbelievable football game, just terrific across the board. And, talking about tying an NFL record, now I didn't scout Ernie Nevers coming out of Stanford. He's a 1920s guy. But, you look at that, you're really impressed in how well this football team was able to play the game against a team they had not matched up well against. You could tell it mattered. And, with Mike Zimmer, he's a guy that he's going through transition in Minnesota, and you can tell real fast. They're not the same on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, like, some of the pieces that was missing, I mean, you were missing Kendricks, you were missing Danielle Hunter. And I mean, he even flat out said it's probably the worst defense. Well, I don't think there's no ifs, ands, or maybe about it. He said that's the worst defense he ever had. So, the Saints, they did what they wanted to do with them in a running game. But they averaged, I think, were 7 yards of at least 15 rushes and stuff. I mean, it was crazy, but it really shows you, Mike, something that we as fans have been wanting to see all season long. We have wanted to see the Saints offensive line perform this way. But that make me think about, Andrus Peat. I got to ask you about this. Sean Payton even came out and talked about Andrus Peat. He said he said it by name. He said Andrus Peat needs to play better. Andrus Peat didn't play in this game. James Hurst played in the game, replacing Andrus Peat, who was out with injury. Looking at this game, Mike, if you were a head coach, if you can be Sean Payton, would you look and evaluate James Hurst at the guard position and seeing how well Alvin Kamara ran the ball and possibly consider, leaving Andrus Peat out and maybe allowing James Hurst to be a starter?
Okay, you stood up for and wanted Andrus Peat on your football team in the spring. He got paid because Sean Payton wanted him on this team. It wasn't because, I think Andrus Peat's a nice guy and everything else. No, Sean wanted him here. So you might say, well, I'm thinking about it, but come on. Sean Payton's not sitting Andrus Peat to play James Hurst. That don't make any sense at all at this stage. You're going to play the guy you have paid. You stood up for him. You the guy that got him paid. Okay, so if I'm the GM, I'm saying, wait a minute. You wanted me to pay this guy, and now you're going to sit him down for a veteran free agent we picked up? Come on, that don't happen. It don't happen in the real world, so it's not happening in the NFL. And I get where you're coming from, but it's not going to happen. If Andrus Peat's healthy, he's playing ahead of James Hurst. Now, what it does is give you an idea of what may happen in the future. I don't know if they can afford Nick Easton, who I think has really played well on the right side. You might not be able to afford him because of the fact, one, your salary cap's come down considerably from what it is this year. It's going to come down again. And the fact that you got a $20 million credit card bill you got to pay for Drew Brees. You have kicked that thing down the can for years and years and years down the road. Kick that can. Eventually now they want you to pay it. So my thought is this. James Hurst, who has played a lot of guard in the NFL, he's just not played tackle, also played guard, could be an option and a very viable option if you have to make the decision, we can't afford Easton. We got to move on this offseason, and let's bring back James Hurst and let him be the swing guy at both guards and also at the tackle position. So, man, you paid Andrus a lot of money. You're going to go through some changes at the center guard. We all know that eventually that Ruiz is going to get kicked to center and McCoy's going to play guard. And so now you got a good look at what Hurst could do at that guard position. So it's a glimpse into the future that, man, I might not be able to afford Nick Easton next year. I might have to move on. But if I can keep James Hurst, he's a really good option at that guard position. And also the fact that he can play tackle is a big addition.
Yeah, I like James Hurst a lot. I like his attitude. I think he's a tough guy. Mike, no disrespect to Andrus Peat, but I just feel like it's just something missing from Andrus Peat that when you look at an offensive lineman, you look at a guy being nasty and tough. I really don't really get that from Andrus. I think he's a really good run blocker. But when it comes to pass protection, I think he kind of lacks in that department. But I do feel like the Saints actually paid him. Do you think they paid him because they look at they're going to have life after Drew Brees, and they're going to have a young quarterback, rather it's Jameis, rather it's Taysom or someone in the draft, and they always say that the best friend of a young quarterback is a good defense, which the Saints have. They're ranked in the top 5 right now, and a good offensive line. So maybe they were looking at the fact that maybe after Drew Brees, we'll probably have to run the ball more. So that's the reason why they paid Andrus. Do you think they just looked at him and said, well, he's not where we need him to be, but he can get there? Do you think that the Saints are focusing on maybe transitioning from being a pass-dominant team to a run-dominant team, the reason why they paid Andrus?
They've always paid their guards. You go back in history. Look what they paid Jari Evans. They wanted to pay Carl Nicks.
Right.
Carl went on to Tampa Bay and became the highest paid guard in the game.
Right.
So they went out and get Ben Grubb. They bid a lot of money. Okay, you spent first-round picks on Andrus Peat. You spent a second-round pick, so to speak, on Eric McCoy, who I think eventually will be your guard. You spent a first-round pick on Ruiz. What that tells you is they have really concentrated on what they believe and what I've felt for a long time too. The league is getting less and less edge pass rushers. I've got to have a clean pocket for my quarterback. So that means a lot more interior pressure, a lot more from the inside than ever before, because you can look and say, well, how many defensive ends went in round 1 last year? 2. Chase Young, K'Lavon Chaisson. That's it. 32 teams need pass rushers. Okay? So you telling me that every team needs a pass rusher, but only 2 win in round 1? Come on. That don't add up. What's adding up is that Sean has always put great emphasis on protecting the middle. He knows Drew Brees is basically a box quarterback. He stays in that box, Every once in a while, he'll move left and right. He stays in the pocket, throws the football real quickly. So if I don't get that quick interior pass rush, man, Drew's going to burn you. He's just going to rip you apart. So I do believe that that is part of Sean's philosophy, short term, long term. You're not using a first-round pick on Ruiz. You're not using a second-round pick on McCoy. You're not paying Andrus Peat. You're not spending a lot of money in free agency on Nick Easton if you were just worried about one element or the other. No, it's always been a big part of his game. And eventually you're going to have to pay Ramczyk, and he'll be a record breaker at that right tackle position. And, Teron's healthy. And when he's been healthy, he's one of the elite left tackles in this game. So he understands that as everything is put about receivers and tight ends and quarterbacking and all that, if you don't have a strong offensive, defensive line, you ain't going nowhere. Nowhere. So statistically, all these analytical dudes want to tell you, well, you win with all these what they call skill players. You know what you win in this league or in college football, even in the prep ranks? Yeah, you need to have a great quarterback. But if I can win in the trenches, I can beat you. Every game, I can beat you. Okay? But that's not an analytical stat. Okay? You look at how balanced this football team is, and I put it on Twitter. It's about 25 plays difference between they've thrown more passes than they've run the ball. That's the closest it's ever been in the Sean Payton time frame of running and passing. And you see a little bit of a sea change happening in pro football. I wrote about this 3 years ago. I could see it in all these camps. Man, you'd hit a whistle, tweet, tweet. All these edge rushers go over here. All these big defensive tackles go here. All these offensive linemen go here. Man, they got a big group of defensive tackles. They got a big group of offensive linemen. The edge rushers, I could have stood in front of them and the 4 guys would have walked around me. You don't see those guys coming out of college like they used to. Now, I've told veteran defensive ends who's thought about retirement. Why? There's nobody coming out that can beat you. No one. So the running game now becomes a big emphasis. Why? Because about 75 to 77% of the time, you in nickel, which means you got 5 defensive backs and I take out a linebacker. So I take out a 230-pound guy and I put in a 195-pound corner or a 210-pound safety. If I go dime, I'm taking out another bigger man to put in a smaller guy. So the defensive guys in the back of their minds, they're saying, wait a minute now. They got us in the rocking chair. The rules are set up to throw the ball, but now we getting smaller to match up. You know what's the offense is going to do? They're going to get big and run the ball at us. And I think Sean won't maybe admit it, but I think in the past, he was a little impatient with the running game.
Yeah,
I thought he was impatient with the running game. And I don't think there's any denial of that. Now, I think he's become much more patient with the running game. Now, you got a guy, I give Spagnuolo a lot of credit. Against Kansas City, I thought they did a really good job of slamming the Saints running game. It stopped it. Okay, you don't want to beat your head against the wall. You're not going anywhere. And they had to throw it a lot more, and they couldn't convert on third downs. So that meant you were 3 and out. You didn't get a chance to run the ball. But I do think what you're seeing, and I see it in college football because I'm hearing it from the coaches, and it's going to happen there first, and then you see the trickle down into the NFL, is that, man, we go into all this nickel-dime stuff. Now teams are running against us. So now you like the cat's tail underneath the rocking chair. You're just trying to move out the way before it catch you, and you hear that big meow. Well, it's going to happen too in the NFL. You look at what's going on with a guy like Derrick Henry, okay? He's carrying the Tennessee Titans football team, and he's made Ryan Tannehill a much better quarterback. I got to go small, or do I go big with Derrick? Okay, it's the dilemma now. And I do think that you're seeing this more and more across pro football of a smaller league on defense. So you know what? I'm going to show you. I'm going to run it at you. And if I'm effective early, I'm going to run it all game, because the one big difference I see personally for me between now and, say, 10 years ago is the lack of depth, quality depth along the defensive line and linebackers for most football teams.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I look at the offensive line. I do feel like it's the most important position. That's why, like Mike, outside of Drew Brees, my second favorite player on the Saints team is Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, I just loved how tough that guy is. I think about him. I think he ended up getting injured. I think in a Vikings game, if I'm not mistaken, he took off one play, came back in, and just completely pancaked the guy. You need those tough guys like on that line, and I think that's so important for a team to have. And it's good to have good solid running play. I do agree with what you're saying too about Sean Payton. He was very impatient with the running game. It was almost to a point, Mike, you actually knew what type of game the Saints were going to have. Like, if they came out the gate, let's just say, for example, if Mark Ingram carried the ball and he carried the ball about 8 yards, and then he carried it again, it was 6 yards, and he got a first down. It seemed like, okay, the Saints are going to run the ball today. But if he come out the gate 2 yards, 1 yard, 1 yard, it seemed like they weren't going to run the ball. So I appreciate Sean Payton for being patient with the running game, because they've had like a couple 40-carry games this season. But I want to focus now.
The other thing is I recall Bill Parcells, when he was coaching for Bill, saying, man, listen, I think Sean's a great coach, but sometimes he get the virus, the passing virus. Okay. And so I read exactly where Parcells went with that particular part. The other thing is, I've talked to coaches on the team, and, one of the things they bring up is, man, when you got number 9, when he was in his prime, you trusted, he was going to get you that first down with a short. It doesn't matter if it was a short pass to the back or to the tight end, going to get you the first down. Well, as Drew gets older, he can still touch greatness every once in a while, but it's not going to be what was maybe in 09 and 10 and 11 in his real prime years, and then a little bit afterwards. So you got to adjust. And I give Sean, I think, great coaches, just like I think great businessmen, adjust on the move. The two things he has paid a lot of attention to is running the football more than he has in the past. And secondly, a bigger emphasis, not that he hadn't before, but I think even more now, on special teams, because all these games are so close today of thinking about a return man, the kicker. Remember, it was a revolving door. Then Will Lutz sort of solved those issues for you. Their return teams, their coverage units, they're amongst the best of the best. He's put a lot of emphasis on keeping guys that they may not be great if you got them in nickel and dime in a coverage point of view, but man, they can play special teams. You look at JT Gray, Justin Hardy. Yep. Those guys are unbelievable special teams players. Dwayne Washington, outstanding special teams player. Deontay Harris has changed the way this football team is because of his big play element. And I think Marquez Callaway could be that type player too. Now you got to learn. You can't
no, and at the
But you sometimes, I get it. Sometimes you sort of lose track of where you are on the field, and you say, okay, I'm drifting to the 8, and I'm drifting a little bit more, and I'm drifting a little bit more. And he thought he would be able to run it. And Sean told us on the coaches show, he was looking to return it. So when he catches it, the guy's too close. So he threw the hand up. He'll learn from that. But look how good the special teams are with this football team, and how much better and how much of an emphasis they are with the running game. I think you could see that evolution with Sean. He did fix the defense for the most part.
Yeah.
Which also was a negative because he added some really good players there. But I think the running game and special teams, has been something that he's put tremendous emphasis in, and you can see the product out on the field of how it's helped this football team win. Listen, you don't win 4 straight NFC South titles if you can't play defense, you can't run the ball, or you got 4 special teams. That ain't happening. That's not happening. I give great credit for that. That he was able to adjust on the move.
Yeah. I mean, they've improved since 2017 until the present. They have improved in some aspect of the game. Defensively, they've improved. Special teams, they've improved. Offensively, when it comes to the running game, it has improved over that span. And I think any Saints fan would have to have an appreciation for that. I mean, that's what it's all about, being a little bit better than you were a year prior. So I like the way the Saints are constructed. I think this is one of the best defenses they had in quite some time. And, I think they'll be able to do something with it. Yeah.
The best ever under Sean Payton. Now, you hate to see something happen, what happened to Quan, and I've covered him since he was in high school. He was one of the top linebackers in the South in Alabama. And then he tore up his knee and didn't play much as a senior. I think maybe 1 game. He missed most of his senior season, signed with LSU. He started for Les as a true freshman. Now, Les, he was one of those coaches, man, I'm not really crazy about starting freshmen. Quan started, then he broke his ankle. Then he hurt his knee. Then he goes to Tampa, hurts his knee again, goes to San Francisco, has an ankle injury and tore a pectoral muscle.
Wow.
And now with the Achilles, and I wish I could explain, just some guys can walk away from this business and not have a lot of things go wrong with them.
Yeah.
With Quan, man, he's had a host of injuries, and he's tailor-made for this defense. Him and DeMario at linebacker, they tailor-made for what they want linebackers to do. So that is a loss. You might say next man up, but I do know one thing. The next man ain't nearly as good as Quan.
Yeah, I agree. Next man up mentality, that's good to have. But Mike, I think we all can agree there's reasons why teams have starters. I mean, there's going to be a drop off. I mean, there's not many guys that can come in right away and just be an immediate impact, especially at the linebacker position like that. I mean, it's like as soon as he hit the field, you can actually recognize his presence. And not to mention, that forced fumble against Jalen Hurts, and also that fumble, against the Chiefs. I mean, that fumble recovery versus the Chiefs. So, I mean, he's a really smart, he's a really smart, very physical, speedy linebacker. And I definitely feel like the Saints are going to miss him, and it's unfortunate that happened. And, I think he'll still be playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if he didn't have any injuries. I really feel that way. I just think that it's been bad luck. It reminds me of like Sean Lee for the Cowboys, really good linebacker. When he's on the field, he's a presence. When he's out there, he's going to make plays, but it just seems like something always happens, and he ends up missing an extended amount of time. But let's talk about Drew Brees. I don't know if you've been following the national media, but the narrative is it seems like the Saints are hopeless now because of Drew Brees. He can't throw down the field, too much air under the ball these days. Mike, do you feel that the New Orleans Saints can get where they need to be with Drew Brees as the quarterback going into the playoffs? Are you concerned about what you're seeing from Drew Brees? I mean, he threw for 311 yards, but he had 2 interceptions. So are you concerned about Drew Brees going forward?
No, because I know what could potentially be your alternative. Come on, Drew Brees gives you the best chance to win.
Yeah.
Man, national media. Come on. All they're looking at is highlights.
Right.
I've done enough shows nationally. I can tell you, most of them got no clue what's going on with the Saints franchise other than the highlights they see or something you might put on social media that they read. They're not watching game film of the Saints. They might watch a little bit of the game, but come on, they're watching other games too. Drew gives you the best chance to win. He's not healthy. You realize that. I mean, everybody realizes with the ribs and with the lung, he's still, and you can see when somebody's close, he's protecting those ribs. And I get it. I get it perfectly on that part. But he gives you the best chance, an opportunity come January to move into a February game. And come on, football ain't a light switch. It's not like you can turn it off and on. And so it does take a little while when you're away from it to get back. And the fact his most trusted receiver is not on the field. Okay. Michael Thomas is not there. That's the guy that if this team moves on, I really think it's going to be because of Mike. As you get into the playoff time, man, they break you down to the point where they know every little thing that goes on. Mike is going to be the difference maker because even when he's covered, he's open. And they got very few guys in this league like that. When he's covered, he's open. He finds a way to make a catch. And Drew trusts him. Absolutely trust him. He's going to be in a spot where he can put the football and they can move it. So I'm not worried about Drew. Again, as you get older, and there's something Jimmy Taylor, who passed away a couple years back, but he told me this because they had some writers write this stuff about Adrian Peterson drinking from the fountain of youth, and he would be the Adrian Peterson with the Saints like he was with the Vikings. And Jimmy called me one day. He was like, Mike, come on, you got to straighten this out. There's no fountain of youth when you've been hit that many times. You can still play, but you're not the same player. Come on, Adrian's playing right now because he needs the money. Financially, he didn't do a good job, or the people around him, I should say, didn't do a good job with him. Can Adrian Peterson still play? Yes. Can he play like the Adrian Peterson we saw with the Vikings? No. And so Taylor told me this. He was like, Mike, my last year with the Packers, I was good, but I wasn't what I was early in the 60s. And when I went to the Saints, I was stealing money, so to speak, because one, I couldn't play no more, and their offensive line was bad. But he said, he gave me the comment, he said, you can still touch it, that greatness. You just can't do it week to week. You just can't do it week to week. And I think with a really good running game, playing defense and special teams, it gives you a little bit of a firewall that if you don't have a great game, you can still win. Come on, you're not the Chiefs, and you don't have a guy like Mahomes who can bail you out. But, man, if I'm Kansas City and I'm thrilled about the fact that I'm this far in the season and I just got one loss, I'm the defending champs. But, man, have they put their hands in the piranha water every week? They got their hands in the piranha water that they could lose games. Yeah. You play that game, and Mahomes doesn't play well, they ain't winning nothing. Now, he may not play a bad game, but still, it's reason for me to believe now with that running game, with the Saints defense, and with their special teams, they can still win. In the past, Drew Brees had to play great. Now, if he plays good, you can win.
And I think that is owed to Drew Brees. I mean, Drew Brees has carried the Saints franchise, and he's legitimized it, Mike. And I think sometimes we as fans, we forget about those things. We forget about the years where the Saints couldn't stop a nosebleed, and Drew Brees would go out there in the fourth quarter or throughout the game, throw for 300-400 yards just to keep the Saints relevant, to that particular point. And now we look at Drew Brees, he has all the pieces around him. And sometimes we take that kind of stuff for granted, but he is a 41-year-old quarterback. And I mean, he's coming off, he has 11 cracked ribs. I mean, so you can't just expect for him to just play as if he didn't have these ailments. And I think that having a running game, like you said, playing good defenses, we've seen that this can happen. I mean, we've seen the same thing happen with the 49ers. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo didn't set the world on fire in the playoffs. It was one game, I think he threw his ball 10 times in the second half. They just ran the football down the throats of the Vikings. and the Packers. So, I mean, I just feel like if the Saints play good defense and they run the football kind of similar to, what they were doing against Minnesota, I mean, they were really physical on the offensive line. I mean, every time Alvin Kamara ran the ball, he just shot through the hole. It wasn't no Le'Veon Bell type patience going on with that. He seen a hole, he ran straight through it. I think if the Saints combine that together with Drew Brees, going out there, he's going to get the ball where he needs to be. I think the Saints can be successful, but I do feel like they put way too much on Drew Brees, and I think it's because of the expectation. I mean, Drew Brees set the bar so high, so if he's not playing at that level in which we've seen in the past, I think people have a tendency of, critiquing him in a I would have to say an unfair way. This guy's carried this team, Mike. How many times have we seen Drew Brees with second half heroics because the defense couldn't stop anybody? And I still believe that he can get it done. But I just think that him being out there like he was in his prime, I don't think he can carry the team the way he once did. But I definitely feel they can go all the way with him at the quarterback position. No doubt about that.
The other thing, too, is the Taysom Hill element. And that, Taysom is touching the football, 8, maybe 9 times a game. In the past, when you saw Taysom in the lineup, you knew they were going to run the ball. Okay, you knew it. Today, because of the fact that he did see work in those games as a starting quarterback, you got to be prepared for Taysom to throw the ball. And so, see, that's the element that you didn't have years ago. He brings you that power running skill, especially in short yardage, goal line situations, conversion down elements. And then the other part is now you have to be fearful of that. He's going to pull the ball out from the belly of the runner and throw the football. In the past, man, I had no fear of that if I was an opponent. And I'm not fearing that Taysom Hill's going to throw it on me. It's in the back of my mind today when I see him in there because he could do that. And so I think, you got to balance everything in life. Not everything stays the same in life. Everything's going to change on you. So you have to adapt. And I give Sean and that offensive coaching staff a lot of credit. They saw Drew, as you get older, you're not going to play these great games all the time. So what can we do to manufacture yards? Well, we put in Taysom Hill. He gives us another element. And if I'm a defensive coordinator, man, I got to figure all that out. I've got to spend a lot of time worrying about what's going to happen when Taysom's in the lineup. Now, I got to figure out how I can stop him on those power running plays. Now, that's difficult, because he's a big man. Now, only thing with Taysom, he's got to just be more protective of the football. And I think you're starting to see some of the younger players now. They ain't rookies no more, okay? And so how big of an impact as we go farther? Adam Troutman, a Marquez Callaway, a Ty Montgomery, who's not a rookie, but he's young to the team. How will they play into this mix as we move forward? Because you got the veterans like Sanders and Cook, and you don't know what you're going to get from Cook from game to game.
Right.
And if you can get Mike back, now you got that other element. And Deontay, with the fact that I think he's so effective on the little shorter pass and then letting that athleticism take over, and also on the jet sweep.
Yeah.
Because, once he makes the turn, you better get your hands on him real quick because he's going to be up the field fast. That they've come up with some very innovative stuff. And now the rookies are no longer rookies. Okay, you got games under your belt now. And it really bodes well for the future of this team and seeing the progress Troutman and Marquez has made. It's tough when you see a guy like Traquan, who were looking as though he was going to get more touches, and he was playing pretty well. He was your best downfield blocker as a receiver, that he goes down. But you got a lot of pieces of the puzzle here. And even though you lost Quan, man, you look at some of the other teams hitting the playoffs, they got a lot more injuries than the Saints do. A lot more. And it's who's the healthiest. Nobody's going to be completely healthy. But who is the healthiest of the bunch? Because this 16-game season take its toll. And just think about next year when it'll be 17.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, like, unlike years past, the Saints, it seemed like they peaked at the wrong time. You have guys now, that's been dealing with injuries. They're starting to come back. I think it was a good move by Sean Payton, allowing Michael Thomas to heal a little bit longer from the ankle injury, putting him on IR so when the playoff starts, he can be back. I want to talk a little bit about that potential first-round bye, but that's the reason why that's so important, because it gives guys extra time. I mean, I know Patrick Robinson, he's off of IR, so we might see him, Deontay Harris. So it seems like guys are getting, healing up at the right time. And also, it was unfortunate for Teron Armstead, but we all know like he would miss a game or two. But him dealing, with the, COVID, being on a COVID list and dealing with that in the process of, him healing his body, being free of COVID, it also gave him opportunity to kind of, maybe heal up a little bit of something that he may have been nagging with throughout the season. So I think those 2 games that he missed might have been beneficial to him and his health when it comes to his extremities. So I just think that right now, these guys coming back for the playoffs, being able to make a run is going to be huge. You mentioned Michael Thomas, him coming back, being close to 100%. I think it's going to be huge for the New Orleans Saints as well. And also, like you said, with Taysom Hill, it's one thing, Mike, to wonder if a play will work if you bring a quarterback in, but you actually have Taysom Hill, who played in 4 games, and you've seen what he can do well when it comes to passing the ball and running the ball. And now it's like when he comes into the game, like you said, defense is really not going to know how to approach him because, Sean can look at a game where you seen that play versus the Philadelphia Eagles. We got these many yards. Or you seen this play versus the Falcons. He probably can use that in a real situation. And while teams may think that Taysom Hill is just in there for RPO, I mean, he probably can take the top off the defense by throwing the ball down the field. So they have a lot of weapons here. Guys are getting healed up at the right time. And I think you combine that with the play of Drew Brees, I really do think that the Saints can really do some damage. But I want to talk about the playoffs now because this is really important. We know about the Green Bay Packers. We know about them, if they beat the Chicago Bears, they get the first round bye. But if they win, if they lose and the Seattle Seahawks lose, then the Saints will get the first round bye. How important is it for the New Orleans Saints to get the first round bye? Or do you feel like the Saints should be okay even if they don't have it?
Well, I'd like to get the bye because I got an old coach that lives fairly close to me, Joe Clark. He coached over 30 years in the NFL. And he said, you know what that bye means? That one less game I got to win. He said, it's great to be healthy, but if I lose with a healthy team, it means nothing. It's one less game I got to play and win. So that's part of the bye situation, that you don't have to win 3 games to get to Super Bowl Sunday. All I got to do is win 2. So that's important. No question you'd want that first round bye. It's huge in that part. And this is very reminiscent of what we saw a year ago, sort of with San Francisco, Green Bay sort of battling it out. And now you got to rely on the Bears to help you. And everybody's, Trubisky's turned the corner and all this and that. Man, I got to see it to believe it.
You're not a believer, Mike. You're not a believer in Mitchell.
A little bit of your road. But you can still win 3 games and get into the Super Bowl. We've seen it before with teams. The Giants did it a few years back, won 3 playoff games on the road and was able to win it. So it is part of the game. And now it's a different part because only one team from each of the conferences has a bye. But it's important because you don't have to play another game. I think that the people missing that part of it. It's one less game you got to win. That's why it's so important for it. Because home field advantage, you would say, man, at one time that was huge. Okay? If it's weather is one thing, but today they ain't got nobody in the stands. A couple thousand people in the stands, that ain't going to make no difference one way or another. And the Saints have been really good on the road. They've been extremely talented in winning football on the road with Sean. Only the Patriots since 2010 have a better road record than the Saints do. Now, most of the time, come playoff time, the Patriots were playing in their backyard.
Exactly.
You got to come over here and play. That's a big difference. So I'm going to say yes. It does make a difference if you're the number one seed. And yes, you do get time off. But even more important, that's one less game I got to play. And so that helps my health if I'm a football team. Not only can I heal a little bit, but I ain't beaten up from another game, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a believer in Mitchell Trubisky either. I'm not buying it. I just think that the Chicago Bears finally realized that they actually have a really good running back in Montgomery. You know what I mean? I don't understand why they wasn't using him in the first place, because the guy's like really good. I mean, I seen him when they played against the Saints, and he almost ran for 100 yards against the Saints. I think he may have had like 84, 85 yards versus the Saints. They started to use him more, and I think they put Mitchell Trubisky under center a little bit more to work on the play action, but that has –
And he can run.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things with Trubisky is that he's got some open field running skills that's underrated, but it's pretty good. He can take off and run with the football. That defense has always been good. They opportunistic. They put a pass rush. When you got people like Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, you can get a pass rush. Their secondary is not household names, but they come up with turnovers. They've always had a pretty solid special teams unit too. So, but this is a huge game, and it's almost like a sucker bet. Okay, that game kind of opened up like 3.5 and 3, and people were like, "Man, they must really believe in the Bears." No, because the Packers have been hot, and they've been crushing some teams. What they want you to do is they want as much money on the Bears as they have on the Packers. That's how Vegas is thinking. And they're not worried about who's winning. They don't want to lose their money. So they want you to bet on the Bears, because they always know a team playing as well as what Green Bay is playing. Big money gamblers. I'm not talking about dudes that put down 20 or 50 or 100. I'm talking about people who are putting down thousands of dollars. They won money with the Packers. Man, I'm going right back to that. Aaron Rodgers, he going to get me my money. It's part of the deal there. So you got to be careful with that. I heard, the hot quarterback is Trubisky. Man, the hot team is Green Bay.
Right.
Because we've been waiting now how many weeks for them to lose?
It's been a while. It's been a while. It's been a while. They've been red hot, and they really shocked me. I really thought the Tennessee Titans would have put up a better effort. I mean, they destroyed them,
Titans can't get a pass rush. I do stuff for the Titans radio network, and it's been disappointing that they've gotten virtually no edge rush. Jadeveon Clowney has been a major disappointment with them. And, sometimes the best deals in life are the ones you don't make.
Right.
The Saints had invested all that money in Clowney, and he's playing the same level. And they put all that money on Vic Beasley, and he turned out to be a dud. They had to get rid of him. Now he's with the Las Vegas Raiders. And John Robinson, who's an old pal of mine, he was a former coach at Nicholls State. He hadn't hit too well on those draft choices and some of those big money players. But, again, they carried with their offense with Derek. And if he is not making plays early in a game and they fall behind and you got to rely on Tannehill and a pass rush, you're in trouble. And they realize that they built a certain way that once a team like Green Bay jumps on them, they're like a bad cat. It's hard to get that bad cat off you. what you get. And Rodgers, it was nothing the way he was throwing the football in that snow and in those conditions. And now they found another big thunder back in Dillon from Boston College. You teaming him up with Aaron Jones now. A lot of people laughed on draft day, because we separated on draft day, but it was Zach and I and Deuce. And, one of the questions was, why would the Packers pick another running back? And Deuce and I looked at one another, was like, I knew exactly why. Playing in Green Bay in November, in December, in January, in those bad weather conditions, and you got a 240-pound back, you try tackling him 25 times in a game and see how easy that is. Now, your analytics don't tell you that, but I'm going to tell you, it ain't easy. When you got him and Jones kind of banging away at you, and you got a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers who has played in those conditions before, and they understand it. And they got great confidence. The big difference from last year is I think there is the communication and the comfort level between him and LaFleur is a lot better than it was a year ago, where you could tell there was some disconnect with the head coach and the quarterback.
Yeah, and I think so too. I think Aaron feels like he has something to prove. I mean, he saw it. He saw them move up in the first round to get Jordan Love out of the draft out of Utah State. And, I know he has to believe that was them trying to get his attention. And since then, I mean, he's like, okay, you can bring – it's kind of like what I heard what they said about with Drew Brees when Sean said he could possibly draft Patrick Mahomes. He was like, well, as long as he don't worry about sitting, he should be okay. I feel like Aaron, it felt the same way. Like, okay, y'all can draft him if you want to, but I still got something to prove here. And, I mean, he is playing at an MVP level. And I think, like you said, I think they trust each other now. I think there's a trust element.
I agree.
Yeah. I think there's a trust element that was missing last year that is there this year, and they believe in one another. It's like Aaron bought into what Matt LaFleur is trying to do, and now they're working together as a cohesive unit. And right now they're on a course to have 2 back-to-back 13-3 seasons, which is not bad at all, especially for Matt LaFleur going into his second year as a head coach. But I look at, before we move on, ask you about the Panthers game. I look at the Chicago Bears. I mean, this is a do-or-die situation for them, and I know that Mitchell Trubisky is playing like really, really well, and they finally giving Montgomery the ball, but I just can't see the Green Bay Packers building all this up this entire season, them being better defensively, them running the football a little bit more, having balance, Devontae Adams having his best season as a wide receiver. I can't see them just putting all that good work together to lose to the Bears as good as the Bears have been playing. But, I mean, you got to give kudos to the Bears for them to giving it the old college try, but it's going to be tough. And also the number 2 spot, I understand if the Packers win this game, the Saints end up being in the number 2 position, we hope. It's not really a bad position to be in, Mike, if you think about it. Because what happens if in the divisional round the Packers slip up and lose? Then the Saints would actually have 3 straight home games going on their way to the Super Bowl. I mean, you have the wild card, the divisional, and, you will have the NFC Championship game in New Orleans. I mean, we've seen that done before. A couple of years ago, the Green Bay Packers were, 15-1? End up losing to the Giants, in a divisional round of the playoffs. And I think that was the year where the Saints actually lost in the playoffs, and the NFC Championship game would have been in New Orleans. So it's a possibility. I understand we want that first round bye, but the number 2 spot is not really that bad either if you think about it. I mean, that would be the next best choice.
Yeah, but it's out of your hands.
Yeah.
The only thing you can control is your game. Go out and beat the Panthers. And the NFL is smart, man. Listen, they slick it out everything when they moved that Panthers game to 3:00. So you ain't scoreboard watching. Now you got the Saints, the Packers, and Seattle all playing in the 3:00 hour. Man, listen, the NFL, they 3 steps ahead of everybody else. That 12 noon game is one thing. Man, got a lot of people going to watch it at 3:00. A A lot of people watching that because they got stuff on the line in that particular deal. So, it's out of your hands at this point. All you can do is beat the Panthers. Because if you don't beat the Panthers, all the other stuff is irrelevant. But you got to take care of your own business. There's so much time people spending on worried about the Packers. Okay, that's great and fine. My thing is, worry about your own business. Worry about the Saints' business.
Right.
Don't be worried about what somebody else does. Now, if that happens, I'm thrilled. But I think it's just human nature. Everybody's worried about somebody else's business. They're not, instead of worried about their own, they're worried about somebody else. But that's life. That ain't even just football. That's in everyday life in that particular deal. So you just got to take care of business against the Panthers. You understand McCaffrey won't be playing. Mike Davis won't be playing at running back. Left tackle position for the Panthers isn't really good. So, man, if I'm right defensive end for the Saints, man, Teddy's in my sights real quick. Now, the thing about when you lose McCaffrey and Davis, you also losing two guys who are experienced picking up a blitz or picking up somebody coming off the edge. Now you're down to your third guy.
Right.
So that's a big difference, especially if I was Teddy, man, I'm saying I'm getting rid of that football real fast. I don't have my left tackle, and I don't have my two starting guys that have started in the backfield. Man, I'm getting rid of that football real quick. So don't help Carolina by turning the ball over. Don't help them. Just keep rolling it. But I do know one thing, which makes this a great matchup, is that Joe Brady, because he worked with Sean hand in hand all those years.
Right.
He understands the Saints offense really, really well. And Joe knows the Saints defensive players, basically all of them, really well.
Yeah.
So that game plan, they came within a yard because that field goal kick, if that kick is 66 yards instead of 67, we in overtime against the Panthers. Panthers played the Saints very well the first time in the Dome. So you just take care of business there. I would try to run it against them, try to control the clock. Drew Brees has had some of his best games against the Panthers, throwing it. But I think when you that hot sort of running it, man, I want to give that a shot. Am I going to be effective again? Now, I'm not going to see the same defense because that defense of the Vikings, you ain't seeing a bad defense like that again the rest of the year. But I want to try to be effective running it because it makes Drew's job so much easier as a passer. And even they have not had a great pass rush. I do think they have a young superstar in the middle, though, in Derek Brown. Man, Derek can play. I never forget last year, Coach O telling me this, that he beat Damian Lewis a couple times on some inside moves. And, Coach O, he jumping on Damian about, come on, Damian, you got to block him. You got to get in front of him. He said, Coach, it's like blocking two guys. So Coach O was like, listen, just block one of the two. At least catch one of them when he's coming up inside.
Yeah, I mean, look, that guy is a real physical interior lineman. I mean, I remember watching him at Auburn and how tough he was. He definitely has been coming into his own. He started off a little bit slow at the beginning of the season. Now he's starting to come in his own. So, but offensively, you're talking about running a football. So let me ask you this, and this will be my final question to you. Knowing how important Alvin Kamara has been to you in this entire season, I understand he's about 60-some-odd yards away from his first 1,000-yard season. How much Alvin Kamara would you be using in this Week 17 game, or would you make this a Latavius Murray game? Because, Mike, we all know that you need a relatively healthy Alvin Kamara going into the postseason, and we know that the Saints' success is going to be because of Alvin Kamara in some regard. So would you try to use Alvin Kamara the way that you normally would use him in a game, or would you try to cut back some of his snaps just to kind of get him ready for the postseason?
I think what will determine that is what happens early in the game. If you have success running it with Alvin, then Sean's not getting away from that. Sean wanted to get him them 1,000 yards, just like he wanted to get him that final touchdown, one way or another. He was trying to get him that final touchdown. So I think what will determine the answer to your question is, how effective will the Saints running game be early? And knowing I have to win this game. Okay? I can worry about what's going on between Green Bay and Chicago, but for me to stay in the hunt for that, I have to win it. It's not like I think you're going to blow them out. So you may use Alvin, but, I always believe that Latavius has got to be a part of this attack, especially because he's really a north-south guy. That's not a lot of wiggle with Murray. He's an up-the-field north-south guy. If you are having success with him, it's to use both of them. But I think what will determine how much Alvin carries the ball is how effective, how big of a lead you have.
Yeah, that's why I feel like you're going to have to jump on them early. And I like the way the Saints started the Minnesota Vikings game, not defensively, but offensively when they just drove down the field. I like that. Starting fast, I think this is going to be key in this game. That way you won't be playing behind the 8 ball. You won't get away from the running game like you said about the Kansas City game. If you start fast, you can still play, you still use balance. But if you start falling behind, then you're going to be passing the ball more than running it. And that's when, you're opening yourself up to possibly getting Drew Brees, some remember me shots, like they get some remember me shots on him. And, I really don't want to see that. Hopefully, like I said, I just hope everybody can get out this game. I want them to get the victory. But I would like for them to get out of here, virtually unscathed. That way, if they have to play I would believe they have to play on a Saturday of next week. Hopefully they'll be ready and they'll have all their guys all hands on deck.
The thing too is, excuse me, is to watch with Nick Easton because, man, I'm a big Nick Easton fan. He won me over this year, how well he's played. And he's an important piece of the puzzle because we've seen Ruiz really struggle at times as a pass protector.
Right.
And can Pete stay healthy? So I might have to play him at one of those two spots as a starter. When you have one concussion in 1 year is one thing. When you've got two, you got to be real careful with it.
Right.
He understands with the concussion issues that have happened and the long-term effects, are you going to play him this game? Or are you going to wait? Now, I do know he came back and he practiced, but that's going to be a decision Sean's going to have to make because you're most vulnerable right after the concussion. The game right after that, you're more vulnerable. You might think about that a little bit more than anything because of the fact that I can put Hurst in there. I can use Hurst in the guard position. So I think a big key there is keeping your front line people healthy. Defensive line, offensive line, because I do believe as we get into January, that's going to be the key element for putting W's up on the board and trying to get that game in February.
Yeah, I think you definitely got to be careful with these concussions. But like you said, Nick Easton, I've liked him like everywhere that he went. I just feel like it was always like a little string of bad luck. Like, he can be a starter on so many teams in the National Football League, but he always went to teams where the guy at his position would be just a tad bit better than what he was, and teams be willing to invest in that guy. But I really like him. I liked him when he played for the Vikings. And I think he every time like they ask him to step in, he does a really good job. So hopefully, he'll be back there on the field. But hopefully, it's very important that he takes care of himself, especially when we're dealing with concussions. We know about the stories now. We know about what it does to guys, as far as like those long term, and we don't want to see that happen. But he is important to the success of the Saints, especially being on the offensive line. But, Mike, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate you here on the State of the Saints podcast. And before you go, would you like to let everybody know how they can get in touch with you?
They can go on saintsreport.com. I'm on the Saints News Network, www.com. It's easy to find one way or another.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We love listening to you and Bobby Hebert on WWL. I mean,
they pay us for that too. So that's
I mean, it's so exciting. It's what I love about you guys. Before you go, it's like watching two guys. Like if you just at someone's home and you're just watching two guys just go at it, talk about football and just enjoying. It's like almost like you're just sitting there just watching two buddies just talk about the game of football and sports, and we really do enjoy it. I mean, it's really good radio, and we really enjoy it, and we're looking forward to what you have to say. Hopefully, you guys will be talking all the way to Tampa. Saints going to the Super Bowl, so we can hear what you got to say about that, Mike. But thank you so much. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Always my pleasure. Who that?
This is Mike Detillier right here on the State of the Saints podcast.